Do I want to continue to chase and try to climb the corporate ladder and just grind myself into the ground? No, I don't. Like, life is way more important than that. I won't make it. I don't know how anyone does. I made every mistake that you could make. And looking back, I'm kind of glad I did. If I could fill that gap from where I am now to where I want to maybe step down with real estate so that I can spend more time with my wife, with my kids, travel, do stuff, that is ultimately what I want to do.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast, where we talk about the agent side of real estate investing, where we talk about the successes, the failures, and all in between. My name is Nico Garcia, local real estate agent and investor based out of Montgomery County, Maryland. And as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts.
Anna Bilek, Northern Virginia realtor and mostly out-of-state investor.
And we have another special guest, a good friend of ours, Mr. Terrance Knight. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Super happy to be here.
And we're very excited for you to come on, share your story. And Terrance is part of our RPM community. I know we've talked about this on multiple episodes, and I had the pleasure of meeting him in person earlier this year. Became a good friend of mine, and I'm really enjoying hearing all his growth in him and his wife in his builder phase and growing his investment portfolio. But before we go into that, I'd love to know, give you some space to, introduce yourself, where you're from, and what eventually got you introduced to real estate.
Yeah. No, thank you, Nico. Terrance Knight. I live in New Jersey, Southern New Jersey. I'm originally from Delaware. I spent a lot of time after college in Philadelphia. So I've always kind of been in the tri-state area. My career, I have a W-2 job. My career has been in finance, asset management for, going on maybe 15 years, which, isn't a ton of time career-wise, but it feels like it's been close to 80. I've always done finance. I've always done asset management. And that's where I currently am now. My kind of journey into real estate, it really kind of started. I put my toe into real estate a number of years ago. I worked for Morgan Stanley, and I was on kind of a trajectory of, going the portfolio manager route. I went back to school, got my graduate degree, and I was really setting my sights on that direction. And I think I got to a point where I'm really getting kind of burned out here. Let me see what else is out there. Let me kind of widen my scope, because that was all I knew. And I actually decided to get my real estate license. And I left Morgan Stanley. I went and worked for a commercial real estate company. Mm-hmm. And that was because, something I love to do regardless is always communicate, conversate, and just connect with people. That was something that I always loved to do. And my job was starting to get too much of being in the weeds and in Microsoft Excel. And I wasn't doing a lot of strategic conversations. I wasn't connecting. So I tried to pivot to real estate. And that was short-lived, to be honest with you. This was back in, I think 2015, 2016. And I quickly realized that I was not, as much as I loved connecting with people, as much as I loved meeting and trying to just, strategize with people, I realized quickly that I am not a good salesperson. I'm not very good at convincing you to do something if you say you don't want to do it. So I was not a very good commercial broker. I was not good at connecting buyers and sellers because obviously, as you guys know, there's usually pull. It's not as nearly as simple as people think to get to the finish line. And I wasn't good at it. So I went back to corporate America. I went back to finance. And then fast forward to COVID, and I was living in a small apartment in Philly with my now wife, but girlfriend at the time. And I just was like, wow, we really, if we're as serious, obviously, as we say we are to each other, let's look to get some space, some air, some grass. COVID really kind of took away all the things about the city, Philadelphia specifically, that we loved. So we were, from that moment on, we were like, let's search for a home. And we purchased our primary residence, but that was my kind of first experience with, working with a lender, a mortgage. Like these are all things that I never had done before. And the agent that I worked with was a fantastic guy. I really clicked with him, and I told him, hey, do you own investment properties? And he said he did. And I, kind of had a conversation with him about what would it take, how could I get one? And he was really instrumental in kind of introducing me into investment properties, because at the time I really needed my hand held. Like truthfully, there was just so much I didn't know, and he did just that. So he was able to find me a property, probably about 15 minutes away from our primary residence, that we were able to purchase. And that's what I needed at first, to just really go slow, had it be close so that I could put my hands on it and manage it myself and understand and make mistakes. So that was really the beginning.
And Terrance, what was the timeline on like buying that primary and then actually getting that second investment property?
It was pretty quick. We closed on our primary in April of 2021. And then we closed on our first investment property in December of 2021. So it was,
Wow.
it was relatively quick. Yeah. And on top of that, we got married in March of 2021. So by the end of 2021, I was like, we're broke. That's it. Like we need to just relax for a little bit and work with kind of what we have here and build some money back up.
Yeah.
So you had just bought a house and you got married. How did you finance that first deal? Because I know some people are probably like, how in the world did you do that? Like they barely have enough to like get that first mortgage on their house they're going to live in.
Yeah. No. So luckily, the house that our primary, since it was a primary, we were able to put just 5% down, which was great. And again, I was someone at the time, like I didn't know down payment percentages. I had no idea about conventional mortgages, owner occupied, non-owner, all of the stuff that we all know now. But we were able to just put 5% down on that, and then use some of the wedding proceeds and some of the money that we still had saved, and purchased our first investment property. But really, admittedly, we were kind of, after we bought that, we were really kind of flying close to the sun. Like that was really all of the money.
Yeah. I mean, I love your honesty, right? You talk about like you needed your hand held on that property, even though you had experience as a commercial agent and it didn't work out. But
Right.
understanding the residential and the commercial side is a little bit different in real estate. So having an agent there to kind of, talk about the investing side, talk about down payments and how you can help scale your business is instrumental, right?
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
I'd love to talk about your background. You talked about, you're in finance, you're still in finance and in asset management. Has that helped you grow? I know it sounds like you're really good with numbers, which most finance guys are. Does that help with any like deal analysis when you're looking at properties?
It does. It's very interesting. You would think that it would be an easy correlation from like my career to real estate. And there are some things that the bridge was like very simple and very obvious. Out-of-state investing is a great example. Like my career, even before COVID, I was very used to working with and managing projects with people who were not in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, or even in the United States, because I was working for these global companies. So I was very used to, having conversations at odd hours or, Zoom meetings with someone who it's my evening, it's their morning. So I was very comfortable with just kind of managing what I needed to manage, even though it wasn't right in front of me. So that I think was like a very easy bridge to like, well, I could invest out of state. Like I'm comfortable with this. It doesn't need to be right in front of me.
Yeah.
But there are some things that are not so much. Whereas, a big chunk of my finance career has been dealing with like budgeting and forecasting, and at such a large level, institutional, global clients, like we're talking billions of dollars. And you would think that to be able to do that as a career, I should be able to do it for myself. I should be able to very easily, budget and forecast my handful of assets versus this hundreds that I'm doing for my job. But for it doesn't. It's not as black and white. So it's very interesting how my career has definitely helped me. My career has definitely made me more comfortable speaking to people, made me more comfortable in situations that are uncomfortable, but it also hasn't helped me in areas where you would think it's like, wow, let's look at the work that Terrance has done for his W-2. It's like, man, these numbers look great. You're doing a great job. Let's look at Terrance's numbers for his real estate. It's like, man, these numbers don't look as good. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a friend, DK, that he works with the government. He's talking about SOPs, standard operating procedures. He does that all day for work, and he didn't do it for his real estate business. He was like, you know what, I need to. So kind of similar to you. It's like, yes, it correlates a little, but it's different. Work is work.
Exactly.
And real estate is it. But I'd love to talk about, so I took a little sidetrack about that, but I'd love to know, like, you became a real estate investor, just, you found your investment property in December of that same year. You bought your primary. So what did that look like? I know you probably learned a lot as you went, but did that agent become a mentor and kind of coach you on what was a good investment?
He did. He definitely did. And he was really fantastic throughout the whole process. And he was always available, after the transaction, which was super helpful. But I kind of took it upon myself to be like, I really appreciated how he put the training wheels on and got me to the finish line, but let me kind of try to ride the bike by myself now that it's mine, now that it's over. And that's really kind of what I did. And to your point, I made all of the mistakes. I made every mistake that you could make. And looking back, I'm kind of glad I did. And what's interesting is like that property, we bought it in 2021, when things were kind of still wacky. Our rate is super low for an investment property. It's under 4%. And the rent has since grown to the point where it does cash flow well. So it's like it's like a cornerstone of our portfolio. And I wouldn't necessarily call it a home run, but it was like a really good hit. And at the time I didn't know that, but despite that, I made a ton of mistakes in the beginning.
Let's talk about
kind of
that.
mistakes.
Yeah,
What kind of mistakes?
I say that all the time about my first property. There was a few things that I tweaked, but I'm always curious, what's your experience?
A couple things. The biggest was really not setting up and understanding the boundary of like landlord and owner. Like we all, as real estate investors, and you guys as agents, that like, even though someone's renting, that's their home. Like that's where they live. And you need to have like a level of care and empathy for that. But at the same time, it's, if as an owner, it's like, it's your asset. And you need to not cut corners, and you need to not, you need to take emotions out of it. That was the first kind of set of tenants I put in there. I was too friendly. I had their phone number. They were texting me anytime that they would have an issue with each other, like stuff like that. It's like, looking back, it's like, that's a nightmare. Why would I ever even put myself in that scenario when, my very, very green landlord experience, I was like just trying to have good tenants and resolve. In my mind, it was like a tenant is better than no tenant. And that, I guess, is generally true, but it could really hurt you if you don't if you don't set up kind of strict guidelines of how you're going to deal with your tenants and what they need to do. That was really the first thing. The second thing was deferred maintenance is something that you can only kick the can down the road for so long. And there does come a point where you need to really kind of think and look at what you're doing and if it makes, and when it makes sense. And when it makes sense might not be the best time. But if something needs to be addressed and it's been too long, then it's unfortunately, you need to kind of bite the bullet. And that was, again, a hard lesson I learned. It's, a very, very rookie investor, and speaking from experience, is like, I just want to get the cash flow. I just want to get through another month where I don't have to pay anything and they pay me rent. You get it through another month. It's like, yes, that is what we all want, but there's it's so much bigger than that. Landlording and owning property is so much bigger, and the timeline is so much longer than that. And to be so short sighted of like how, like, just worried about your cash flow number month to month, it's going to end up hurting you. And it did for me. And like those were some big lessons.
Yeah. Because I mean, that deferred maintenance, depending on what it is, you kick the can and then it ends up being more costly at the end of the day to fix it than if you had fixed it originally in the beginning.
Yes, exactly.
Is that what happened to you?
That is, we had a hot water heater, needed work, but it was kind of just, we when we bought the property, the inspector was kind of told us hey, it's
dying.
It's at the end of its life. I can't tell you when. It's, it could be next week. It could be 2 years. So, you're on borrowed time. As a rookie investor, I took that as, well, I'm just going to leave it until it goes.
Like, I got 2 years.
Yeah, right. It's like, that's not necessarily the case. So yeah, stuff like that, was really critical in the beginning. And even, again, in the beginning, I didn't have any system. I wasn't really tracking anything. Obviously I knew what the rent was. I was trying my best to like abide by the landlord laws and have a proper and correct lease. But even then I was really kind of just winging it. So it wasn't a very good way to just go about things. And, thankfully, obviously nothing bad happened. There's like no legal action or anything like that. It just was, I wasn't protected really.
I can totally relate to, being a rookie investor. And at the end of the day, you want to take care of your tenants and help them and be there for them. But you can easily get taken advantage of, right? If you're not setting the boundaries up front. This is something that I learned down the road of like little maintenance things, like changing light bulbs or something small, to not reach out to us as landlords. That's something that this is the tenant's home. They're responsible for things like that. So setting that up ahead of time can save you wonders down the road.
Yeah, exactly. And I've also kind of learned, one thing is, this was when I was self-managing, and I don't manage any of the properties now, but there does come there is a difference of like, if I would get like a maintenance ticket, for example, and now I'm upset, and now I'm annoyed. Now I got to find a contractor or some sort of vendor to service the issue. And it certainly is good to shop around and make sure that you're not overpaying for something small or something dumb. But there's also no reason to kind of nitpick for 2 weeks over something. Whereas, the issue could have been resolved. Now the tenant's frustrated because it took you so long. You were just trying to save $100 here or there. It does come a time where it's like, it's an issue. I don't need to call in 10, 15 different contractors to look at this when I know the estimate's going to be in the same ballpark. Let's get it done. We'll move past it, and the tenant will be happy and thankful that you acted with speed and diligently, and they know that like, hey, he and she do care, and they're not just kind of just letting me live with this situation.
Can we talk a little bit about that, Terrance? Because it sounds like you did self-managing before you delegated. And I know Anna and we talk about that all the time, where you need to know how to manage properties before you just go out and tell a property manager, because you don't know what a good property manager is versus what a bad one is. So what do you think that valuable as a newer investor to actually go out and do it yourself before you're delegating everything?
I do. Yeah. And no one is going to be able to take care of your asset the way that you do. No one's going to care about your asset the way that you do. It's like similar to like, trying to find a nanny for our daughters. It's like, there are some wonderful people out there, absolutely wonderful, but no one is going to care for my child the same way as myself or my wife. So that's kind of how I like the general comparison that I make, but I do think it's valuable because there's so many things that you aren't gonna know. There's so many things, like, you don't know what a bad property manager is. And we can, I don't want to divert the topic but I didn't know I had a bad property manager when I did, because I did have a bad property manager starting back in 2022. But I didn't know that they were bad. I didn't know what they were doing. I just thought like, hey, the house is still standing. There's a tenant in it. They're wiring what little bit of money I'm supposed to get every single week. So they're doing great. Well, no, that's not
a little more to
I
it,
think
right?
that, yeah, a little bit more to it. So I definitely think it's invaluable because now you know, like personally, what works for you. Like I'm a communication person. Not everyone's a communication person. Some people are totally happy with saying, please don't speak to me. Please don't hit me up. Just tell me what it looks like at the end of the month via a statement. That's all I
Mhm.
need. I'm on my way. Where someone like me is like, man, I would much rather you tell me if there's an issue. Okay, it's a house. Like we all know that things are going to need to be fixed and paid for, but just tell me before it gets there. Tell me you were able to look at a couple different quotes. Tell me that you proactively decided to fix an issue because you fix issue B because you were working on issue A, stuff like that. And that's just kind of how I operate. So, like, I think part of it is a good property manager is a little bit your own preference, um, because it's not property managers are very, very different.
I was just curious though, like that transition. So you were self-managing, and then did you at some point put processes and things in place that while you were self-managing it to make it better? Or like were you like, this isn't for me, this is for the birds, and you just started looking for a property manager? Like what did that transition look like?
So I was working to try to clean it up a little bit and try to get some processes and just try to kind of get myself together. But at the time we had our second daughter, so it was like I was like my time was just becoming more and more. Um, yeah, I was
Limited?
kind of pushing, yeah, limited, and I was pushing it off, and I wasn't. So I was kind of losing my like momentum of like really kind of like building this up and getting to a place where it's like, all right, I feel good now that I'm still in the driver's seat and I'm in control. And I think that I was looking a little into the future a little bit, and I was just like, this is still, she wasn't going to get any, it's going to get harder before it gets easier with their second kid. So I decided to just reach out and vet a couple property managers, which to this day, they're still our absolute best property manager. And I think that a big part of it was because of the beginning, managing it, understanding what I look for, what I like. And then I did take the time to speak to, I think I spoke to maybe six property managers and kind of understand how they work and how they operate and what they like to do and what they don't like to do. So that was a big piece of it. But I was trying to transition it, and I just decided, I've done this. I've learned my lessons, hard lessons. Let me hand it off. And it worked out great. It has worked out great.
Did you say though that you had a bad property manager? Did I hear that wrong?
No, you did. You heard that right. I did have
Where does that fit in here?
Yeah. So I did have a bad property manager. So the kind of the timeline is after we bought our first investment property at the end of 2021, we were broke. And this again is like before I was in RPM. This is why I had a very narrow like kind of idea of how you purchase properties. Like I thought the only way to purchase a property is like you need to go to a bank and you need to have them give you a percentage of it, a large percentage, and you need to pay them the rest. And that was it. That's the only way you can get it. And so I told my wife, I was like, well, if we want to do this again, we need to like save. We need to save money. Like that's just how we got to do it. And so then fast forward a year, 2022, we had saved enough money to try to do it again. And I hit up my agent and I said, hey, this has kind of been great. And I really kind of like doing this, even though, kind of tripping a little bit. And we started looking and it just didn't make sense. The prices were gone. Prices were too high. It was just rates had changed. It just had changed. So then I started looking out of state and we landed in Cleveland. So this was like my first experience with like an out of state property manager. And I didn't know what was bad until I had handed off my New Jersey investment property to a property manager. So that was, yes, that 2022 purchase of the property in Cleveland, the property manager on that they were pretty brutal.
So,
it's a running theme. That's what happened. That's what
happened in Ohio too.
in Akron.
Yeah. But Terrance, I mean, it sounds like you had experience on your own and then you ended up finding a property manager and you mentioned vetting, 6 other agents. And it sounds like communication is very important to you as an investor,
Yes.
right? What other attributes were you looking for, like in a property manager? Just
Um,
curious.
yeah, communication's huge. Even proactiveness. I have a property manager who did something the other day and I was like, wow, that's fantastic. Like I really appreciated it. I made sure to like let him know that I really appreciated it. There was a property that we own in Indiana. The kitchen floor needed to be fixed or replaced. And that was done. And then and which was fine, like that's great. And then I'd spoke with him maybe about a month later and he said, hey, the bathroom floor probably needs to be fixed as well. But what he's like, if you're okay with it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the rent a little bit because this isn't a renovated unit. He's like, but if we start to get to the point where I'm renovating little tiny bits and pieces, he's like, I'm going to help you and I'm going to raise the rent. And stuff like that. I wouldn't have even brought it up. I wouldn't have even said, oh, you're fixing all this stuff. Like he needs to pay more. That's just not what I would have thought of. But just something like that based off of his experience, based off of what he kind of how he likes to run things. I was like, that's fantastic. So thank you. So communication, being proactive. I've had a property manager come to me and say, hey, we were doing like a quarterly walkthrough or like a tenant turnover and everything looks great. We're going to list it. We're going to try to start getting tenants in here. But I did want to let you know, there's like a tiny bit of like moisture in the basement or something like that. Like, yeah, we can get a tenant in here. It's all good. But X, Y, and Z, keep in mind, if you want, we can take a look at it when you're ready. Just make note of it. Stuff like that is huge. And that helps me so that I'm not, a year from now, 2 years from now, hey, you have a massive problem in your basement. There's a crack, it's leaking, there's all sorts of stuff.
I think that for being proactive as a property manager is such a game changer for exactly what you're talking about, right? These little things that can be fixed now don't become huge things down the road, and you don't get blindsided by a big cost that'll just eat up the whole cash flow, especially if you're doing like the out of state investing, like you guys are.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask, I mean, this is all stuff that you figure out as things pop up, but like when you're initially interviewing these property managers, like how do you gauge that? Because some of the stuff you mentioned is fantastic, but like you don't know that until you're like already signed an agreement and like in the
You're
weeds with
right.
them.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. And I think that is right. And I have, it's almost like a job interview. It's like I have kind of to go through the interview process and it's like, this sounds great. This sounds awesome. And then you start working there and 6 months later, you're like, wow, this is not what I thought. So you're right. You're exactly right. There is some of that. And that has happened to me once where we had to kind of, I didn't leave the property manager. We still have that property manager, but I had to kind of like maybe do like a hard reset. And again, that's like, was not like a great conversation, but it was more of just like me being open, me kind of trying to see like, hey, is it possible to do X, Y, and Z? And that I think has really helped. But, before, one thing I do look for when I'm like vetting property managers, and one thing that in my experience has helped is when everyone has like a clear role, like a defined role, the good property managers that we have, and it doesn't matter how large or small your team is, there are amazing property managers, but they manage tens of thousands of units. But there's also amazing property managers. They manage 30 houses. So it doesn't matter. But as long as you as the owner, as like the customer, know if I have a maintenance issue, I need to call person A. If I have a tenant issue, I need to call person B. If I have a code, city, certificate, licensing issue, I need to call person C. Like that to me is really big. And not only that, I had to be able to get in touch with you. Even something so small as like an email signature with your email and like a phone number. It's funny. You talk to some investors and like, I don't even have a phone number to call my property manager. It's like, oh man, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Just like they might not answer, but just to be able to have an open line of communication, to be able to leave a message, to be able to communicate whenever something needs to be addressed, because, we all know that email is great, but a lot of times it could delay the process. Certain things can get lost. It can get confusing. It's like, let's just talk on the phone for 2 seconds and figure this out. That was the most direct and easiest way sometimes to not lose time and to not um, just get confused and lost in the weeds.
Yeah. So I know, and we'll talk about out of state investing because I'm always curious. But actually, this is a question for, I guess, both of you guys. When you're initially having this conversation with the property manager, like we're all on the East Coast and we all have, ways that we do things. And once you get into Ohio and Indiana and, from what I've heard, it could be like a little bit different and they're a little bit more lax and timelines and things like that. Have you guys experienced anything like that in terms of, obviously communication, but are there other things that are a little bit different when you're doing out of state investing, out of state markets?
I mean, I will say for me, like just the laws in general are different in a lot of places. So like the number of days, like if someone doesn't pay and the number of days to post notice, some states it's 3 and some states it's 5. And some states they have certain provisions still in place. Like we were just talking to our property manager like a couple hours ago and they're like, oh, the CARES Act is still in effect in Summit County, which is where our properties are. And so there's some trickiness, like it's very tenant friendly because it's a carryover from COVID. So things like that, like I wouldn't know. I would need somebody that is well versed unless I do the chat GPT thing and hope that it's pulling recent resources.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I totally agree. I totally agree. That's 100%, 100% right. But you're right. Like the East Coast is definitely unique in the sense that things are done differently. And I have had that experience working with folks in Ohio, really working with folks in Indiana. And the advantage is exactly like you just said, like if you're cognizant of that, if you're cognizant of the fact that like the whole country doesn't operate the same way.
Especially the cities. I will say it's not just East Coast because we have properties down in Southern Virginia and it's like a whole nother country down there. They work at like a snail's pace. So it's like East Coast in the city, like completely different.
Managing your expectations, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly that. And I've had agents and people in like Indiana or Ohio tell me like, Terrance, thank you. Like this is a breath of fresh air because a lot of people from New York or from California, and they just try to do things their way. It puts you at an advantage to be able to just adapt and like, look, I understand. Let's meet in the middle a little bit. I know I'm very East Coast. I know I'm very direct and want to just kind of work things out, but I get it. I totally get it. So I think if you're cognizant of that, it's super helpful.
Yeah. So I'd love to talk about out of state investing. You started in New Jersey and you got an investment property. You were very hands-on. What made you decide you wanted to go out of state? Were you looking to continue scaling? I know you talked about the prices from COVID went a little crazy.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I think we realized that we couldn't, New Jersey had kind of gotten out of reach, gotten to the point where it didn't really make sense it just didn't pencil out. So then started doing all of the research, forums, bigger pockets, was looking at a bunch of stuff and trying to find where does it still make sense, like rent to price ratios, and then looking at like what's a landlord versus tenant law, like where is it favorable to landlords versus tenants, and all those factors led me to Cleveland, and we were able to purchase a property out there for 129,000, which was much lower than the property that we purchased here, and much lower than what properties were going for on the East Coast at the time, even in 2022. So that was really, and again, like I'd mentioned it earlier, like the comfort was there, the comfort to just say, well, we can't do it in our backyard. We need to go somewhere else. And through my W-2, through like my experience, it was like, we could do this. We could do it. People do it. And if you're prepared and understand how the difference is and the similarities, you can do it.
What did that look like, Terrance? Were you buying single family properties? And also, are you doing just the traditional long-term rentals or are you dabbling? That's probably one thing that a lot of newer investors, they can get lost with all the midterm house hacking, rent by the room.
You can. And no, you can. And I can see why. I definitely get shiny object syndrome. It's hard not to, especially when you're in like a phenomenal community like ours. There's people doing just amazing things, and you can't help but be interested. But I have really tried my best to honestly be pretty vanilla. I mean, I had bought everything that we had purchased has been 20% down, either duplexes or single family homes in areas in the best areas that we really like and that we believe in. And it's funny, like if I knew what I know now, what all three of us know, being in the, having some experience and being in our community, there are a lot of different ways that you can acquire property. There's a lot of different things you can do, a lot of different strategies. So I can see how a rookie investor would want to try to do it all.
Yeah.
But we've really tried to stay just long-term rentals, purchase them slow and steady, and trying to optimize them as best we can.
Yeah. I will say with out-of-state investing, this is me personally, I think it's easier to go long-term rental because there's so many facets when it's an MTR, STR. You have to get a different level of boots on the ground to like do the turnovers, to make sure the furnishings are there, like the utilities are okay. Like it's a lot more hands-on, I think, with MTRs and STRs, and from a distance. It is a little bit more difficult to do that from a distance with a lot of different properties.
Yes, yeah. I agree with you.
And especially for like your first one out of state, the vanilla path is totally okay. The 20% down, and there's nothing wrong with putting more money down and increasing that cash flow and getting a feel of the market, right? Before you actually are getting all creative, because you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. And then that's how a lot of newer investors, they dabble in something and do a fix and flip, and they don't have any background in construction, and kind of, they're like, oh, real estate investing is not for me, right?
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So can you share for the audience members that have never bought out of state, what did that first house look like for you? Like, how did you find it? How did you find the team I'm assuming you had to find an agent somehow. Like, what did that look like? Like if you were telling the story to a new person that wants to try it.
So again, it's pretty vanilla, but at that time, I didn't have any connections outside of New Jersey. And I went on Bigger Pockets, and they had like an agent finder. I'm assuming they still do. And I was able to kind of talk to a bunch of different agents, probably like 4 or 5 different agents. And which is fun, which I enjoyed. And I ultimately went with a younger guy, who I really liked. Him and I, very similar kind of mindset and strategy. And he was the one who was like really instrumental of, he helped me find a lender. He set me up with a property manager, which ultimately wasn't the best property manager, but still he was like kind of like my door, and behind the door was like all of the other kind of boots on the ground. And at the time, which again, probably a rookie mindset at the time, was I did so much work vetting agents and finding someone who was an investor themselves, had been in the market, understood. I put so much kind of weight in that. I trusted their kind of references from there on out. I knew that, okay, this person has it going on in this market. So of course I will look into using their lender. Of course I trust their property manager. Of course their handyman A, B, and C, if they've worked on their properties, probably are good. So that was really kind of my mindset. Again, super rookie, my first kind of dabble out of state. I was really kind of putting a lot of faith, all my eggs in that basket, and hoping it worked out.
How do you, I don't know if you did have the fear of doing out-of-state investing. Like, were you actually going to these properties, or was it like, how are you touring the properties?
So that was a big part of what I would talk to the agents about. Obviously, as you guys know, they'd have to have worked with investors before, preferably be an investor themselves. And working with an investor before would tell me that, like, okay, every investor you work with, there's no way that they live within the Cleveland city limits. So they were comfortable, going to properties, sending me videos, walks through, kind of narrating the videos as they would go through, like, oh man, that doesn't look good. And interior, exterior, neighborhood, really giving me a ton of information. Whereas if it was the agent here for probably 15 minutes away, truthfully, I probably didn't get as much detail because I was at the property. I walked it. I was like seeing with my own eyes, looking, and I maybe didn't ask every question I needed to, but really good kind of like oversharing of all this information with these out of state agents.
Okay. And how's the portfolio look like there now? And I will talk about Indiana as well, but how does it look like in Cleveland? Is it
So Cleveland,
one property?
We just have one duplex.
Okay.
Yep. So we have the one duplex in Cleveland. We have the duplex here in New Jersey, and then after Cleveland, we actually pivoted, stayed in Ohio, but pivoted to Columbus. So we have two single family homes in Columbus, and then we now have a duplex in Evansville, Indiana, and then we just closed last week on a single family in Evansville, the single family, kind of value add in project. So Cleveland, to answer your question specifically, it's been good. It's been steady. We kind of pivoted from Cleveland to Columbus just based on a number of different factors of really like the economic growth they got going on. It's kind of the stuff that they have with the population, like these companies that are coming in, just stuff that's really, really exciting. Absolutely nothing wrong with Cleveland. We were just kind of attracted to what Columbus is working on and working towards.
Okay. So just knowing you and being friends with you for the last couple of years, I know that you've grown as an investor yourself, right? And you're taking on projects that maybe need a little bit of value add. You might talking about how, shifted to buying properties like that are deals, like well below market value. So you can, do the sweat equity.
Yeah. Yeah. So interestingly enough, the first property we bought in Evansville, we got for pretty below its market value. And I think the reason we got it, and I'm a firm believer of like relationship building. I'm a firm believer of just, believe it or not, I think it really sets you apart to be able to communicate with someone, to articulate your goals, your strategy, and not bulldoze them. You see it all the time, and you would be surprised by certain people's personality and be surprised by certain people who have success. And it's like, it kind of makes you scratch your head. Like, I don't know how you got there, but, I'm a firm believer of like just being authentic, being kind, and just communicating. And I think that because of that, I was able to work with an agent and a property manager in Indiana who we ultimately had a conversation, and he said, hey, I know you haven't purchased anything here yet. I know you're looking to buy. I have a scenario where I have a 2-unit it's priced as if both units were renovated, but only one is renovated. Would you be interested in kind of going down this road of pursuing this property if I could get the owner to agree to a much lower price? And of course I said yes, but I truly believe that, if I was a jerk, if I was acting like I was East Coast, like, I don't think that I would have been able to have that conversation or be presented with that opportunity.
Got it. So what did that deal look like? I know you shared the story before. So you got under contract. He was able to talk to the seller and get a lower price.
Yep. So the duplex was ultimately listed for 140, and it had been on the market for a long time. Like 200 plus days, like a long, long time. And I think that, like a lot of folks, when they're browsing the MLS, it's kind of harder, and myself included, it's kind of harder sometimes to read between the lines. They would kind of see that and say, oh, well, the numbers absolutely don't work at 140. So even if I could get them down to 115, 120, like it doesn't work. Next and skip. And, but what ultimately happened was the property manager had a conversation with the owner and said, hey, you're never going to sell this unless you have two options. If you want this price point, you need to renovate the one side. Or you need to drop the price if you want to sell it now. And he said, let's sell it now. And he was able to get him down to 85K. And yeah, both units are rented, even though one side was fully renovated and the other side was not. There's an older gentleman in the side that's not renovated, but having that conversation with the owner, it made it a killer deal. So it was really, it really worked out for the seller because he needed, he needed the money for other reasons, and it worked out for me to kind of purchase something that we were comfortable with and that we knew had a good buffer and could establish us into this market.
And that just came from relationships, right? Knowing the agent on the other end, and I know Ben, who's been on our show as well, has been instrumental in helping you with that team over there. Um, so I know you talk about like, what's the game plan for this property? Like,
Yeah.
are you gonna keep that? It came with inherited tenants, which we can go into a whole other topic, but you mentioned one needs work. Are you keeping the tenant in there in place, or are you
Yeah.
moving them?
Yeah.
What's the game plan?
No, it's a great question. So the game plan is to kind of have it, to just really keep things as is. And so the side, so it's two sides split down the middle. The one side that is fully renovated has I think just a young professional, and she moved in I think a couple months ago and is very happy with it. And the side that is not renovated is an older gentleman. And I think this is a conversation that I had with the property manager before purchasing, and was why it kind of made sense. And he said, "Hey, he's an older gentleman. He's very nice. He's very he's still with it, but I believe that this is probably will be his last home until he needs to go somewhere for care."
Yeah.
And I said, "Great, that's great. Like he can stay there as long as he desires." And the thing with that is, I don't know, that could be in 5 months he could need care, in 5 years he could need care. And I'm certainly not someone who's going to just kick him out to fix it up. So our plan is to really kind of hold it, and just let it cash flow as is. And then once he does move out, we will fix it up, be able to raise his rent even more, and ultimately, maybe if the numbers make sense, refinance or something like that. So it's almost kind of like a delayed burr almost. But those aren't, we not even thinking about that. We really kind of just purchased it because it just made sense at that price point, and it had stable tenants in it, and it was able to establish us in this market.
And I know we talked a little bit about like some cool loan products that your lender over there has. Is that something that you used on any of these properties that you bought?
So this property was just a very straightforward, again, back to my vanilla strategy. It was just 20% down, and it was over 20 years versus 30. Just the loan product that, or the lender, the bank that they used. This was like their most common, and at such a low, at 85, at such a low price point, the difference between 20 and 30 years, ultimately it's like a couple bucks a month. It's not a complete deal breaker.
Yeah.
So it did make sense to kind of go with this 20% down, 20-year commercial product.
Okay.
Yeah. I noticed that with the bank that we use down in Southern Virginia, which is also a smaller, like, local bank. Like, if you don't live in it, they pretty much consider it a commercial loan, because this is a duplex. So technically it's residential, because up to 4 units is what conventional loan you can use that kind of financing. But a lot of these local banks, if you don't live in it, then it's a rental and it's commercial, period, the end.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So what's next for you, Terrance? Are you going to continue scaling in these out-of-state markets? And what's the end goal? Is it to get financially free through real estate? I know we're all working towards getting that, but is that your actual goal?
It is. It is. I think my ultimate goal, yes, would be to have that financial freedom. And I know that we all dream of just having this golden portfolio machine that just runs and runs and feeds us, on a monthly basis. I know we all dream of that. And, but to be honest with you, realistically, getting back to like my career, getting back to my W-2, it's been a grind. And the work that I do, if I'm being fully transparent, I'm not as passionate about it. I don't, it's a job. I work with wonderful people. I work with very, very smart people. But do I want to do this until I'm 65, 70? No. I wouldn't make it. So if I'm going to be realistic, if I'm going to think about what do I want real estate to do for me and my family, I would love to continue to scale at a steady pace. And I would love to get to a point where I do have enough cash flow. I do have enough equity. I am able to leverage my portfolio so that I could maybe take a step down in my career. I'm never going to not work, and that's not my goal. My goal is, I'm not, and then again, this is why I love RPM so much. This is why our community is, we're not trying to 10X everything so you can just sit on the beach for the rest of your life. Like, no, I'm realistic. Like my job, my W-2 provides like benefits for my family. Like there's things that I know I'm going to need, but what do I want to do? Do I want to continue to chase and try to climb the corporate ladder and just grind myself into the ground? No, I don't. Like life is way more important than that. Like I won't make it. I don't know how anyone does. So if I could take a step down in my career, if I could stop chasing the next promotion, the next level, more work, and taking a step down, if I could fill that gap from where I am now to where I want to maybe step down to with real estate so that I can spend more time with my wife, with my kids, travel, do stuff. That is ultimately what I want to do. I'm totally happy to be a 40, 50, 60-year-old, just really kind of boring manager at a company because I know that I'm leaving at 5, I'm coming in at 9. I don't need to work nights and weekends, and everything else, my life is being supplemented by real estate. That's my goal.
I love it. Is your wife at all investing with you? I know Brian and Ann are our big team. Jess helps you with designs. Are you guys a team when you're doing these out of state investing, or are you more
We are.
spearheading? Okay,
We are. Yeah, we are. And I this year and really make a push for next year is, my wife is very interested in helping the like kind of administrative side of real estate. And I think that as we've kind of grown, because when you have one property, we have 2 properties, like I was doing a lot of it. And like we were talking about earlier, like I was kind of like flailing and scrambling, but it's like, we're getting to the point now where it's like, Anna knows this because I talk about it a little bit in our group, but I need to kind of put like my big boy pants on and grow up. And there needs to be systems, there need to be processes, things need to be straight in line, and it needs to be treated like a business. And doing that on top of, work and being a husband, being a father, like it's a lot. And I think she realizes that and is like, let me step in, let me help. Like, how can I help? How can I manage all these emails from these property managers? Like little things like, let's create one email and funnel everything into that instead of me getting stuff to my email and forwarding it to her while I'm at work. Hey, can you call such and such? Like just really trying to move everything into like a consolidated spot so that she can help manage it. It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately what I would love is, us 3 sitting down a year from now and I say, hey, like, I don't do anything but like the strategy. I don't do anything but the scaling and the networking and cause that's what I love. Like I hate putting stuff into stats. I hate looking at, P&Ls. Like I just like, that's what I do for work. So I love this stuff. I love communicating. I love talking. I love just like trying to prospect and figure out where can we go next. And so that's the goal, is to kind of have her, and she wants to do it too. It's not, it's not really, it's not me.
That's a good thing.
Putting it on her. Yeah, she does. She does. Yeah.
Awesome. I know we are running close on time. We always like asking 2 final questions. So
yeah,
I know it's we all consider ourselves builders, right? We're still newer investors, but we've learned a lot in the last few years. So what is some advice that you would, tell your younger, newer New Jersey, when you're looking to buy your first rental property? What is some advice you give that younger investor that you know now?
I wouldn't say I was necessarily afraid. But I will say that in the beginning, I wasn't afraid of things going wrong or things happening, but I was afraid of asking for help. I was afraid of being the person who, it's like, you just started. Like you gotta, you're not supposed to ask for help when you first learn to ride a bike. You gotta fall down. It was like, that's not the case at all. People are willing to help. People will, give you guidance and and support. And if the way that I ask for help now, being in our community, the way that I kind of self-educate now, I wish I did that in the beginning. And that's what I would tell rookie investors. Just, that you don't need to, it's a lot. It's different than anything you've ever done, real estate investing. Even if you're an agent, even if you're work for a property manager, if you're close to real estate, it's still different when it's your ship because the reality is that, you're the CEO, you're the CFO, you're the COO, you're everything. And, you're not going to know everything. You're not going to know everything. So always reach out for help and get support.
Yeah, and you're not alone. I noticed a lot on the investor side. Everybody's so willing to share all their experiences and
Yeah.
all their
Yeah.
knowledge. But I'd love to give you some space to talk about community, right? I know we're all part of the RPM community, and you get to, talk to investors, things like that. How has that been a game changer for you and for your business?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I used to do like the Spartan races, and this is years ago, like a long time ago. And the first one I ever did, there was like a sign at the end, or maybe in the beginning, and it said, it was like an African proverb. It said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yep.
And it's such a good, like, I'm not a proverb person, like, but I was like, that is really, really good. And it is so applicable to my journey because I do feel like I kind of went fast. I was running around, I was scrambling in the beginning, but I was alone. I was alone. And then you join a community and you have such a sense of like togetherness. And you can go so much. I don't think, I've been in RPM for almost 2 years. I don't think that I would be able or be where I am. I know for a fact that I wouldn't if I didn't have that community support, education, resources, because there's just so much you don't know. And people who think investors who kind of are a know-it-all rookie is not a good formula at all. And
Yeah.
that person, guy or gal, will not succeed. Eventually, things will go wrong.
Yeah, 100%. Shout out to Coach Carson. We've had him on our show a few times, and he built a really great community of like-minded individuals. Right? Everybody's wanting to see everybody win. So we encourage you guys, if you ever are interested in RPO, definitely reach out to either one of us. And our final question, Terrance, what can Anna and I and our audience do to help you? Is there anything that you're looking for? Do you have a buy box or anything that you need help with in these upcoming months?
Um, I touched on it a little bit. Is I'm at the point now where like optimization is the name of the game for me. And getting myself more of, getting my portfolio to be more of like a self-sufficient machine rather than me needing my W-2 or my wife's to kind of supplement. That's really kind of where I am in my focus in the next couple of months is to understand what are the best practices, what are the best ways to make sure that your real estate is doing what it's supposed to do, because we all know that like, real estate over time, over a long enough period of time, like it will start to take care of itself. Like things will smooth out. And that's that's one of the many beautiful things about it. But that won't work without you doing some work. That
Yeah.
won't work without you having processes and systems and understanding certain things that need to be in place. So I really, really would love to hear from you guys is kind of what you've done or are doing. Because it's continual work. It's not a set it and forget it to get your properties, to get your portfolio to a place where we feel good about how the portfolio is churning and burning and taking care of itself. Yeah.
I think that's one thing I don't want to speak for Anna, but that's something that I also need to make sure that I'm implementing and having some systems that, eventually I can hand off to property. I don't have any property managers at the moment, so I am the property manager and eventually delegating. So I hate using the P word passive, but, essentially delegating and having more time, right? Time freedom.
Yes.
Yeah. The hard part is, honestly, is you have to make the time. You have to sacrifice the time to put these processes in place. Because I am still a work in progress myself. I worked for the government. I wrote stops, and now I'm like, ew. Why do I want? I don't.
What?
But it makes a huge. I will say I have started to write some. Some of it is forcing yourself to like make a list. I've used ChatGPT to be like help me brainstorm a list of like SOPs that I would need as a self-managing landlord to kind of give me ideas. And then when I finish one, it's like, ooh, like I did one with like templates of what are the emails that I send to like prospective tenants that are reaching out. And instead of me going through my phone and finding that one message and copying and pasting it over, now I have it in a quick guide in my Google Drive. And I'm like, oh, I can go in there, copy, paste. And it's I don't know why I don't do it's like working out. Like once you're done working out, you feel fantastic. But like leading up to the workout, you're like, oh, but I'd rather do this and I'd rather
It's
do
such a
something
good,
else
yeah.
and the other thing.
Yeah.
So I would say I'm happy to share whenever I have. I would say ChatGPT is also a great resource to just do like an initial like brain dump and talk to it and have it like try to help organize you. But yeah, that's my 2 cents is like it feels so much better. It's just like a good workout when you get one of those like processes written out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all love that. That's a great feeling.
And then
Yes.
eventually making it a habit into your business.
Yes.
All right,
Correct.
Terrance. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I really enjoy our conversation and just watching you grow, man. I think you've grown a ton in the last 2 years and building your portfolio out of state. So I'm enjoying watching you and your wife grow. We'll definitely have you come on in a couple months and in the year.
Oh,
We
yes,
can talk
please.
about
I'd
how
love to.
the
Are you coming to
portfolio.
Tennessee?
I am. Yes,
Oh,
I
yeah.
am.
All right,
Yeah.
awesome.
So
We
I
get
will
to see
see
you
you
in
guys
person.
there. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Terrance, if anybody has any questions or wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out to you? You have any socials?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Terrance Knight on LinkedIn, but we also do have an Instagram. It's K&K Properties on Instagram. So yeah, trying to get my social media presence up.
That's right. Make sure you guys reach out to Terrance if you have any questions. And you can reach out to us. Please like, share, subscribe if you found any value. You can reach out to me at N Garcia Official on all social platforms. And you can reach out to Anna at
I'm Anna Bylick _ realtor on Instagram and Anna Bylick everywhere else.
All right, Terrance. Thanks so much. See you guys on the next one.
Thank
Thank you
you.
guys. Appreciate it.